You're tuned into the Boba Bunch podcast, Conversations of a Silicon Valley Sisterhood. Season 1, Boba Part 3, Boybands, Landlines, and Fax Machines. Welcome to the 90s. Grab a drink, get settled, and let's hop right in. Hello, and welcome back to the Boba Bunch. We are in our third episode, or third Boba Pod now, and super happy to be back. As usual, let's start off talking about the boba that we have today. So today we are trying a place called Cha Express, and we went to the location in San Mateo, California. I got the grapefruit strawberry tea with no ice and 50% sugar. I really liked it. It has a very strong tea flavor, because a lot of the times when you get boba, you taste more of the syrups and the milk, but not the tea. So this is actually really nice. And it's a nice fruit tea. I've never had a grapefruit and strawberry combination, so this is new for me, but it actually worked pretty well. Kind of citrusy. And yeah, I think I'll get it again. I mean, the menu looks really good. Like, there were so many drinks I wanted to try, but for today, I got something pink and citrusy. So let's see, who else wants to introduce their drink?
So today I got a red bean matcha snow, and I actually really like matcha and I like red bean, so it worked out. I'm used to having some kind of textured thing within the drink, so the red bean is really great. I like having something to chew on while I'm drinking, so I think that was a good choice for today.
Today I actually took inspiration from our last session together when Katrine had a mango smoothie type drink, and I wanted that as well. So today I tried the cheese mango smoothie with 50% sugar. It's really delicious. I love the way the cheese foam topping goes with everything. Very refreshing. I guess when I have a smoothie, I never add any toppings to it, but I won't lie, I do miss having something to chew on with my drink, but it's really tasty. So I would definitely order this again.
Today I got the drink that's called Champion Milk Tea, which has boba and some pudding and wrapping, also some jelly in it. So the reason I chose it is because I have been a fan for Chai Express for a long time, and I really like their traditional original milk tea. And this one has many different chewy stuff added in, so that's the reason why I want to try it out, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I would say give it a shot. It is, I like teas that actually have tea flavor. So like I said, I would also highly recommend this place. I'm just looking at the cup, and it says it's been in business since 2006, which feels like a long time ago, but also not so long ago. I was thinking when I was younger, there weren't actually that much boba shops here in the US. So it feels like such a luxury to have so many choices nowadays, such that we can try out a new place every month for many years to come. But yeah, so today, we are in December. It's the holiday season. We are getting ready to be off of work and do fun things, and not worry about waking up early and making it to work awake. And that's awesome. So it's also a month to reflect back on the year and also things that have happened that made impact in our lives. Last month, we talked a lot about, what we were thankful for. This month, we're thinking about maybe looking forward a little bit and also thinking about the fun things in life. And as promised from last month's episode, we were going to talk a little bit about holidays and things like boy bands, because we grew up with them. And as such, we are going to discuss our childhood favorites this month. So opening up the floor. We will eventually get to boy bands, but I don't know what do we want to start with today. We talked a lot about the 90s, about the technology and the pop culture. So let's start there.
Sure. Earlier we were talking about having landlines, which was a very difficult thing to grow up with that a lot of kids won't get. Having one phone number that everybody in the household shares. And those of you who are fortunate at a time to have a cordless phone could wander about the house with the phone as opposed to being restricted to one that was corded and in a room that you could not take around with you. We talked about having dial-up internet, which uses your landline. It occupies that landline if you're on the internet. And so if you picked up a telephone within your household, it would log off your connection, and a lot of people would get angry. And that's something that I think a lot of kids don't get nowadays. And that is a pain that we had to suffer back in the 90s. I don't think it was early 2000s. Maybe it was gone by then. Was it?
Oh, it was still early 2000s.
Okay.
Because I have specific memories of being like 13, 14, 15 and still having the whole landline dial-up issue. I also want to piggyback and say that kids these days maybe don't understand what it's like to have to call someone's house and speak to a parent first to ask permission to speak to someone. God, there's just so much, so many memories.
Yeah. Or only being able to reach someone if they were at home or at a location. You can't reach someone just anywhere.
And texting. I mean, sure, texting became a thing maybe late 90s and early 2000s, but it definitely wasn't common for teenagers to have their own phones at that time, their own cell phones, really, maybe here and there. And like we were talking about earlier, it's not like there was internet on it. Games consisted of Snake. What some people had Sudoku. So,
you know, the funny thing about that is a lot of people who had Snake had Nokia phones, right?
yes.
I didn't have a Nokia phone, so I felt left out. I had a flip phone, which I thought made me feel more grown up because I had to flip my phone open to talk and make phone calls. But I think the advantage that other kids had with a Nokia phone is, one, they all had Snake, and they all were good at Snake. So whenever I played Snake, I sucked at it because I didn't have a Nokia phone. And then you could change the case on the phone, which I was so jealous about because some people would change their case according to their outfits or the season, and I was just restricted to silver. I don't know if you guys had that experience or if you guys had a Nokia phone, then I'm jealous.
I did have a Nokia phone at one time, and it was very exciting. Very, very exciting. But I think we did have the same experience with learning to text. There was not a keyboard with letters on it, people born after 2000. We had to push the number to get to the letter we wanted. So it was quite the skill. Quite the skill to know what you were texting, or not having to delete a whole bunch because you pressed, your number 5 the wrong amount of times. I don't even know how to describe this to somebody that's never had to do it.
Yeah, and this was, I think, also before MP3s became widespread, so that with my Nokia phone, like if I wanted a ringtone, I had to go find like a MIDI file back then. I don't know if you all remember what that is, but it's very analog sounding sound. And then if, for example, I wanted to put, I don't know, a Backstreet Boys song on it as my ringtone, I have to go find that song, figure out the MIDI code numbers, punch it in manually, and make sure that the phone doesn't die before I save, because then you have to start all over again. I think it can only capture maybe 10 seconds of the song, so then you're trying to find that chorus part. And then test to make sure that it's actually, coming up as it should sound. And back then it was so cool when you figure it out. But nowadays it's like you just download whatever MP3 you want and set it as your ringtone, and that's it. I can't imagine that. Like as now, I wish I had that as a kid. There's just so many options now, but back then everything is just dependent on the tech savvy people to figure it out, so they can go online and via dial-up connection and find that file so that you can put it into your phones. Things have certainly changed. Jin, any experiences with older technology?
I remember I didn't have a Nokia phone myself, but I remember playing with my dad's phone because he's the only person in our household who has a mobile phone at that time. And my dad is quite generous, and he will showing off his phone and then teach us how to use it, which is super nice. And I remember at the time I was so fond of calling my friends after I can use my dad's phone. And I even wrote a script because we have to still talk to my friend's parents through the phone to call a friend. And I even wrote a script that's so pretentious and so well polished that no friend's parents will reject my request to talk to a friend.
That's awesome.
Speaking of friends, this made me think of that. Do you guys remember Anytime Minutes and your nighttime minutes? So back in the day, there's this thing called Anytime Minutes was anytime you would call people, but you would usually have a limit to that. So if you called before 7 p.m., and usually after 7 p.m. it'd be your nighttime minutes, and that was unlimited. So you could just talk forever until whenever that ended in the morning. So you would tell your friends, call me after 7. And if they called you before 7, you would get angry because you're using my anytime minutes. Like your parents might have only given you an allotment of 100 minutes per month. And if you went over, then they would get charged more money. And then your parents would get mad at you. So then you would get mad at your friends for calling you before 7 p.m.
And on top of that, do you remember when texts took minutes as well? So it was almost like, don't text me. We are not texting. We're just talking after 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. or whatever your anytime minutes plan allows.
Yeah, I remember being really frustrated with my friends as well with the texting thing because I actually didn't have a smartphone till way later, till everybody else already had a smartphone and unlimited data plans. So back when I was still on a limited data plan, each text that I receive, I also have to pay for it. So I pay 10 cents going out and 10 cents coming in. And I had a friend who he was group texting like 100 people. So if you imagine an annoying email chain at work and everyone just reply all and keep sending, like, stop spamming me, that's what happened with my precious 10 cent per text situation. I had to I'm someone who was pretty passive aggressive. Like I didn't like to call anyone out, but that time I was just like, you've got to stop. And also because I had a very stingy dad. Like my dad will look at all the phone bills and check out every single phone number because it's listed. Everyone who's texted you, their phone number shows up on the bill. And he'll ask you, like, who is this? Who is this? And at that point, I was like, I had no answer because for some of these are strangers from that group thread. So, yeah, that was not fun. And please do not group text your friends. Well, I guess nowadays most people have unlimited data, so that's not a problem. But I definitely remember that memory. Ugh.
I think I can't remember. It's only been in the past, like, I'm going to say 4 or 5-ish years that we went to unlimited data on the family plan. I can't pinpoint exactly when it was, but I've even been in that role like, oh my God, who is using this much data? Like, it's costing this much extra. We need to calm down. We need to make sure our Wi-Fi is on. Why are we only running around with our data?
I think that's still a thing now where it's like you go to someone's house or somewhere like and you ask, what's the Wi-Fi password? Yeah. Because you don't want to use your data. Because not everyone still has limited data.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I'm on a unlimited data plan right now. Because I'm always on Wi-Fi everywhere I try to go.
I think we had to, because I'm still on the same family plan with like my mom, my dad, and my sister.
That's why I said I don't know if I am, because I'm on a family plan as well, and I'm not the primary. So
I am the primary. So I was the miserly person combing through the bill till a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh my God, it just makes way more sense for us to do unlimited. But it is It's not cheap. I did want to take a step back with our technology of the times, though, because I started thinking about in the 90s having a like a boombox, and it's like a manual stereo with a tape recorder. Well, yeah, a cassette player / recorder in it. And I remember thinking about the MP3s is what got me going a little backwards. Because at that time, mid-90s, mid-late-ish, like, CDs were around, but they were still pretty expensive. And I don't think at that time we had been using Napster and Kazaa and anything else like that. LimeWire.
We're so knowledgeable.
I mean, we've only read about this, right? It's not like
I didn't use it.
We definitely did not use it. We just
heard about people using it.
Yes, we heard about it. So before that, we would have to listen to the radio, and if there was a song that we really liked and didn't want to have to wait for it to play again on the radio, we would have to get a cassette and put it in and make sure to hit record while the song was on the radio. The playback quality was amazing. But that's definitely a fond memory.
And trying to press stop before the commercial or the DJ would come back on.
Because then you don't want to have to mess around with rewinding and potentially eating up some of your song before recording the next song.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like maybe because I was a kid still when that was happening, where we would record those songs.
Yeah.
But older people would make mixtapes, right? Like they would give them as presents to their loved ones. And I always thought to myself, like, that must be a lot of work to try to record all of these multiple songs from different like locations. Like maybe they recorded off of the stereo, off of the radio, or maybe they recorded some of it off of a CD to string the whole thing together. And I always thought those were so much effort.
And then, just a couple years later, we could make our own mixtape CDs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, now we're in a time where like streaming services are huge, right? Like Spotify and
you just make a
Pandora.
list.
Yeah.
You just gift your friend this list.
Yeah.
I made this mix list for you.
Or the streaming service will make you a list for you.
You don't even have to think about it.
Yeah. And it's like, thanks. I didn't know I liked this song or this set of songs put together.
Thanks, algorithm.
Yeah.
And it's high quality files too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, mixtapes. I definitely made quite a few. Actually, year ends were good times for making mixtapes because of the countdowns. Lots of radio stations would have like, I don't know, the top 100 countdowns. And then if the DJ is good, they'll kind of let you know what's coming up. Then you're just waiting really patiently. But I was remembering about using a cassette tape recorder to record things. You have to press like the record and the play button.
Yes.
At once.
It was more complicated than just the record.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes because it's so mechanical, sometimes if your button doesn't work, then you just miss out on that, first couple of seconds of that song, and you're like, so it was difficult to make the perfect mixtape. And so getting one back in those days, I think, was really touching because you're like, wow, someone actually put in the effort to do that. But I mean, I think the sentiment is still here. If you're putting together like a Spotify list, I still think that's really awesome. And now that it's not so much restricted to just what your local station plays, it's just anything around the world, which is great. Yeah, I do really appreciate getting to discover new music. The way that it wasn't as accessible back in the 90s or early 2000s, unless you happen to have a friend that was exposing you to something else. But now, you're right, we can listen to anything from anywhere around the world, and it's easy for people to share it with you, and you can find things that you never knew you liked. The algorithm knows, but
yeah, we get more exposure to more international music for sure nowadays.
Definitely.
I mean, K-pop is huge now. Yeah. And I think, in other countries, our music is really popular, which that was a thing, I guess, in the 90s. where I would go to another country and they're listening to our music. But then I would think like, but I don't hear your music where I live in the US, unless, like you were saying, unless somebody else was exposed to it and then exposes you to it. Nowadays, you can just look for any kind of music and you can find it like at the drop of a hat, like Spotify or Pandora or whatever other service you might use.
Yeah, I remember in high school or even college. So this is late 90s, early 2000s. If I wanted to hear music from other countries, I think the only way was to go to Borders or somewhere. When do you also remember Borders?
The bookstore.
I love Borders.
Yeah, Borders.
Borders is no longer in business, but Borders was the bookstore that had books and toys and also lots of CDs. They had a section called World Music. Mm-hmm. That was the only place where I could really find things from other countries. So I get really excited whenever I find artists that I listen to in Chinese, because I was like, I didn't think that they would import this. But of course, because it's imported, it was super expensive. So yeah, I think we're all super privileged now to be able to easily access anything that we want to. But since we're on the subject of 90s and mixtapes and music, I think this is the time to talk about boy bands.
Yeah.
My association of December and boy bands, because several boy bands and also just pop singers in the 90s release Christmas albums. And those were always my favorite times because I love Christmas songs to begin with, but also then my favorite artists are singing it. And it's like, oh, cool. So yeah, what are some of your memories of boy bands or even just 90s pop icons? There were so many.
Actually have a story about me being a belligerent child surrounding very specifically boy bands. So this was late 90s. This is when NSYNC was just emerging, but there was already kind of a healthy boy band situation going on. So I remember it was either 10 or 11. So it was either Christmas of 97 or 98. And I asked for a CD for Christmas, but I asked for not NSYNC, not Backstreet Boys. I wanted this band called Five. And that was the only thing I wanted. I wanted this CD from this boy band that probably not too many people recognize.
Five, not Jump Five.
I think it was just Five. Where it was
just Five.
It was the number 5 and then IVE.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I thought they were
British.
I thought they were Jump Five, but they could be Five. I wasn't a huge fan of them, but
well, for some reason,
I saw them on Disney Channel. That's where I saw them for the first time.
I'm glad you remember that.
Yeah.
I can't remember where I got this mini obsession from.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. Like, if you played me the song, I'll know it. But off the top of my head, I can't remember. So I really wanted that for Christmas. And much to my dismay on Christmas morning, I had an NSYNC CD waiting for me.
Oh, that's like getting the lump of coal.
That's a different 5-member boy band.
5-member group. So I remember being very disappointed because I wanted 5, and it was very kind of my mom to go and seek out a boy band CD for me. And turns out I love NSYNC, but at the moment it was a moment of childhood tween devastation.
Yeah.
So that's my Christmas introduction to NSYNC story. It's a happy ending.
I don't think I asked for Actually, you know what? I got Millennium, a second copy of Millennium for Christmas. This is not NSYNC. This is Backstreet Boys. If you're not aware of the Millennium album, because I already had the Millennium album, but I listened to it so many times that the disc became not readable, by my compact disc readers anymore, because I would switch it from my home stereo, bring it to the car, and then vice versa, and then over time it just got a lot of wear. And I guess my parents really paid attention because I didn't even ask for another copy of it. But on Christmas, I got another copy of Millennium the same exact album. It's just a new, fresh version, so I could keep listening to it because my other one was kind of destroyed.
It's really sweet.
Yeah. Well, my mom actually really liked Backstreet Boys too, so maybe it was for her too.
That worked
Because
out.
maybe she saw that I destroyed our copy and we needed a new one.
Good looking out, Mom.
Yeah. And actually, Millennium had a song dedicated to moms.
Oh.
I think it was called Perfect Fan.
Yeah. Yes. Oh.
So maybe that's why she really liked that album too. There's my memory of like boy bands and Christmas, because Backstreet Boys didn't have a Christmas album back then, right?
I don't think so. Not that I can remember. When I think of boy bands and Christmas music, I automatically go to NSYNC or
98 Degrees. Yeah. The gift or this gift. Yeah.
I
love that song. I love it. It was on, if you guys haven't seen it on Disney Plus, the very boy band holiday special. So some of 98 Degrees is there singing the song.
Yeah. I think NSYNC was also, I think there was a TV special with that album. Something like that. I remember.
I believe it.
Because back then they were everywhere. So yeah, I mean, I was also into NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, and I think a little bit more so NSYNC because my mom is a huge NSYNC fan. Like she knew all the lyrics, even though she didn't know English that well.
Hey, that's a good place to start. I like that.
Yeah, we actually, my sister and I, we made her, because she was driving a car that only had a cassette player. So then we recorded a cassette tape off of our CD so she could listen to it on her drive to work.
Oh.
But yeah, so that was kind of the memory. Like I just remember NSYNC was everywhere. I was more actually into the girl idols. I was in love with Britney Spears. I had her posters all over my room. And also Christina Aguilera. I mean, there were so many. Jessica Simpson. I mean, it was all Mandy Moore.
Oh,
yeah. It was all just feel good songs and songs about teenage love and angst and all the things that teenagers could relate to. I mean, now that I think about it, it's all very silly, but
yeah. I could relate to it. So
it felt real.
It felt real. Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. Like I was, sending lyrics to friends. We trade lyrics like, this is so you right now, and you write it into your yearbook when you sign them. You quote and sing.
Yeah.
We took it very seriously. I remember back in those days, people would argue over who was the best boy band. And it did end up escalating quickly sometimes in high school because people just care so much about it. But I thought it was something that I never was really that into pop music until then, and it kind of gave me something to do in a way. I mean, whether it's buying the albums or back then going to concerts, we had to actually line up at Tower Records.
Oh my god!
In Sacramento, we actually had to line up outside it physically to buy tickets, and that was kind of interesting. And also buying the merch. I mean that, and I was also in this. I don't know if a lot of people know about this. Back then, the record companies was trying to do marketing for these bands, and they had this thing called street teams. I don't know if people remember this. So I kind of stumbled upon it from, I think, like a Yahoo or GeoCities mailing list. It's a group. And then they're like, okay, well, your job is to we'll send you a bunch of promo items like posters or sample CDs, and you just go to your school or wherever and just spread them. Oh. And I had no intention of really doing that, but I signed up because I got free swag. So I still have them. I have like really nice PR packages of Backstreet Boys and stuff in my house right now. Which I should share with this group here sometime. But that was a really interesting memory. I was able to get on the like PR promo teams for a lot of artists who before they became famous, like Nelly Furtado. I had her autograph because because they were super new, they were willing to sign autographs for everyone. So I had a couple of those, and lots of like free items. Yeah, I didn't know how many people were actually on that, but that was one of the things that I did during the 2000s, early 2000s, late 90s. But yeah, I'm curious about Jin. So Jin, how much did you know about the 90s, like American pop culture, and I guess back in the days, what kind of music did you listen to?
I would say I wasn't very into pop music when I was little before I came to middle school, because it was when I was in middle school that my classmates started to listen to the pop songs, either from the U.S. or from Taiwan. At the time, there were many famous Taiwanese pop stars. Um, and the first time I got to know about Backstreet Boys, that's the only boy band I knew at that time, was when I was in high school. So it's late 2000s, it's not early 90s, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that the first time I heard their song that my friend gave me, at that time it was already through MP3, it's not the tape. I recognized the songs. I knew that I've heard them so many times when I was little, but I didn't know that it was Backstreet Boys. Yeah. So it was a big surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, so some of the pop songs became so famous, like more famous than the artists themselves. Like, for example, I was talking about Britney Spears, right? She has a Christmas song that plays everywhere during Christmas. And when I was talking to people about it, and they heard it like at the mall or something, they're like, this song sounds really familiar. And I said, yeah, it's Britney Spears. And they're like, no way, it doesn't sound like her. I'm like, no, I swear it's Britney Spears. And they're like, no, you sure this is not like Mariah or someone? I'm like, no. But yeah, it's just, I think sometimes that 90s pop culture have become so interwoven into society in general that you don't even have to know who these people are. Like, if you ask me to name all the boy bands, I probably can. I mean, there's so many. But if you play like a Westlife song, I can probably tell you that I know that song.
That's a deep one. Westlife.
Oh yeah.
Westlife Boyzone. We're going international.
BB Mac.
BB Mac. I love
BB Mac.
Yeah. And then when they would make crossovers with your favorite teen shows too, that was like an explosion.
Oh my god.
Like BB Mac was on Even Stevens once.
Beautiful times.
Or anytime, or anytime they're on like SNL or any kind of halftime shows, I just have my VHS ready. Yeah, I was still on VHS. Getting ready to tape it.
Speaking of taping, just so everyone knows, you could tape music on your cassette, or you could use your VCR, which I know not everyone is going to be familiar with anymore, to use the VHS tape, which is the black rectangle tape. And it was a very similar situation where you had to be ready to record, and you had to press record so that you could catch whatever you wanted on TV, and then stop so that you don't record commercials, because there's a finite amount of tape. It is actually a film tape in there. Oh, lots of good times. And oh my god, somebody could record over your special.
Yep.
And that is pretty devastating. So
I think my dad recorded a Super Bowl on a VHS tape, and I think my mom recorded over that VHS tape. And that was, back then, it's not like he could YouTube that Super Bowl again.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like that was gone forever. He just had to accept that it was just gone.
Devastating.
And I remember the argument where it was like, it was clearly written on the VHS tape, Super Bowl and the year, but my mom used it.
Oh, yeah, that's fighting actions over there.
I think we can pivot to VHS tapes, because I actually had this conversation with someone a few weeks ago about Blockbuster, about renting movies from Blockbuster. Just specifically about VHS tapes, because there's always that label on it that says please rewind your tape before you return them, but nobody really does that.
Rewind.
Yeah,
we can rewind. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, do you remember that little car thing that you buy, the tape rewinder, just to rewind the tape?
Mine wasn't a car, but I saw the car ones, and those were really cool because you stick it in like the car hood.
Yeah,
I remember feeling that it was really time consuming to rewind it as well, which I don't know why, like probably just me being a kid, but
it did take a long time.
Yeah.
I felt impatient about that. Or if you wanted to watch it again, because what else are you going to do when you spend the money to rent a movie? You're going to watch it more than once, right?
Yeah, I remember there were different lengths of VHS tapes available. Like there were the shorter ones, and then there were ones that were like maybe 240 minutes. So then if you get the longer ones, then it takes a while to rewind. But yeah, I think Blockbuster, I think they kind of had a security thing on it so that you can't really duplicate the tapes. But that was always something that we tried to do. I don't know. Did anyone else try? People have thought of putting tape over the little lock thing, and anyway.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I always thought you had to have two machines to do that.
Yeah. So I had two VCRs, but it wasn't mainly for Blockbuster. So I guess we can talk a little bit about there. So as within the Chinese community, there are video rental stores for us to rent dramas and movies from Asia. And so a lot of us would go and rent a series, which would end up being like 30 to 50 tapes. So for that reason, my parents had two VCRs so that we can dub them over. So just rent it once and then return them. And sometimes that's what me and my sister would be doing all day. Just the same thing. You want to cut out, the credits and making sure that it's all, cut out the reviews and then properly label all of the stuff. So that was actually part of my memory of being an immigrant in the U.S. Nowadays it's so much easier because things are on YouTube. But yeah, before YouTube, before even DVDs, the tapes, and you're hoping that every time you rent a set like that, you're hoping that all the tapes will work fine. Sometimes, like on tape number 49, the physical tape, something was wrong with it and you can't play, and that's super frustrating, especially when you're at the climax of the story. But now I think about it, I'm like, that, it's really interesting to think about it now, because now it's like if I were to look for something from other countries, like we talked about before, just hop on YouTube or, wherever. There's always something. Or like Netflix now, there's so many Korean dramas. But before that, for those of us who were immigrants or who moved here, the only way we can get in touch with our, home culture is to be able to find these mom and pop stores. So both of my VCR machines have broken down throughout the years just because we dubbed tape so much. Actually, I should mention. So in my parents' house, my parents actually has an entire wall of shelves dedicated to VHS tapes. Like we still have VHS in the house. And every time I have friends over and they see it, it's like a museum. They're just like in awe of this. It's literally from floor to ceiling, an entire wall of just VHS tapes. My parents just couldn't let them go. And it's funny because it's all just stuff from TV. Like it's like ABC, TV specials, the Charlie Brown Christmas, all of those things that we just taped everything. But we never got to watch it. So I don't even know why we kept.
Just in case you wanted to watch it.
True. So maybe my house is the true computer museum. I always say that because I actually have my first computer, which was from the late 80s. I still have it with the dot matrix printers. Those are the printers you see in movies with the sheets with the holes on the sides.
You have to rip it.
You have to rip it off. So I still have that. And then my computer also used the big floppy disks, not the small
actual floppy ones.
The 5-inch, the big ones. So yeah, my parents' house is actually a museum with a lot of antiques. My parents also hoard things. Like they never want to throw things out. So yeah, I came to the US in the 90s. We still have all the things that we brought with us from the 90s. But yeah. I know I kind of went off topic, but I just thinking about the old technology that we had. What else do you remember? Like things like fax machine. I probably still have mine somewhere. Beepers.
Oh,
I didn't have a beeper.
Pagers. I never had it, but I remember thinking it was crazy that you would type on them.
My brothers did. No, you didn't type on the beeper. You would use
on
the
pager. Yeah. Sorry, on the pager. Wasn't the pager?
I had a two-way pager when it had a keyboard.
Oh.
The Motorola ones had a keyboard later on. But like the original pagers, you would just get, I don't know how to describe a page, but you would get like a beep. You would see like a phone number, and usually
That's right.
it would that would basically be like,
Call me
a
back.
notification to you to call that phone number back. But then people learned to do a thing called pager code, where like you could communicate with them by typing numbers instead. I never learned pager code. My brothers did, maybe because they were older and they had pagers, and I
That's
was
what they
still too
had.
young for it. But yeah, I remember pager code, and people would like write things in numbers, and I don't know what they're talking about.
Yep. Pager code is kind of like using the calculator numbers to type like hello.
Oh,
So it's similar to that.
Okay,
So it just looks like.
Yeah, it looks like
Okay.
letters.
got it.
But yeah, I remember pagers. Like my mom was the only one who had a pager because she was working out of town, and then it was for emergency. But then I was kind of like, during an emergency, I still have to call that number and get that message delivered to me. Like, what is the point, right? But yeah, that we had the fax machines. We also had this really old thing called telex machine. I don't know if anyone here knows. It's probably something from the 70s, 80s. I would describe it as like the original text messenger. So it's like a full keyboard, like the old school typewriters. You've all seen typewriters. It's kind of like that, but then it also kind of connects to the phone line. So it's one of the very first message senders. So back in those days, we thought it was so cool that we had one of those. It was a huge. It's like the size of like a digital piano.
Oh, wow.
Really big, and all it does is just send messages. And we had that because my dad had his own business at home. So then we were, I don't know what he was doing with it, but I like to play with it when I was a kid. Like I had it turned off, but I just pretend like I could type really fast just to get that the mechanical keyboard sound.
Yeah,
which is funny.
Pleasing.
Yeah, which is funny now because people are spending a lot of money to buy a mechanical keyboard just to get that sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's so satisfying.
The feedback.
Click,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a coworker with mechanical keyboard, and like it wasn't me typing on it, so I wasn't getting that pleasure. I was just hearing his clicks, just driving me insane from the other side of the wall. What was I going to say? So I do remember fax machines. We were cleaning out my grandparents' house after they had moved back to the motherland, and we found like 7 fax machines in the house. And I was like, why does my grandpa have 7 fax machines? I don't know if he updated them over time, every time. I don't even know how long he was using fax machines. But I remember my grandma having a fax machine in her office. And she ran her own business, so I would sometimes be babysat by her while she was working. And I'd pretend to work in her office, even though I was a little kid. But every time a fax machine came out, the thing that I remember is I don't care what was on the fax machine. I just wanted to get it because it was warm. I don't know if you guys ever grabbed a fax, like a fresh fax. Mm-hmm. And it was like you could kind of like cuddle with it. And I kind of felt like, in a sense, that was my job too. So I'd tell her, "Don't grab the fax, I'll get it." And then I would bring it to her, and I'd feel like I was working, kind of. But yeah, it made me feel important. The fax was warm. I remember the big printer. I forgot what you call that. But yeah, ripping the sides off. I always wanted to rip the sides off of the paper because that was pleasing to me. Or whenever we got deliveries, I would want to pop all the bubbles in the packaging. The other thing I remember too is the calculators that had like the roll of paper on them. My grandpa was an accountant. Yeah, so he had a bunch of those too, like all over the house. And I would use those as a pretend cash register and use those as, here's your receipt. I would rip it off. And yeah, those were really fun. Those are some of the old tech. I remember that. I don't know if they have that now. Calculators that print on paper.
I worked in a small office 2 places ago, and they were still, I mean, granted that was like 9-10 years ago, but they still had that. And the accountant liked to pull it and actually look and check everything off.
Yeah.
So I think it depends if,
I guess maybe because we have Excel now.
Yeah, we can do kind of whatever on the computer.
Yeah.
But I think she in particular was maybe a little older and just liked to do it kind of like, I think I really like to write things down and check off a list, even though there's a million tools online to do the same thing, but satisfying. Yeah,
my family also had one of those calculators that print stuff. And I did the same thing. I used it as a cash register. And I think my parents use it for accounting as well, and also doing taxes. I remember our tax person had one as well. I never really know how to read it because it's just numbers that you type out. But yeah, I remember playing with it with my sister because we didn't have a lot of toys back then, especially compared to today. I think today's kids have so many toys, but back then it's all just with our imaginations and role playing. So we role played everything. Obviously, being a cashier was fun until you start working as a cashier. Then it's not fun. But
yes.
As a kid, you're like so cool. You get to play with money. You get to press buttons. So yeah, we did a lot of that and use that calculator to print out stuff. That also reminded me of carbon papers. Oh, I also like to play with that too. That also made me feel fancy because like, oh, okay, I'm signing a document here.
And it has multiple copies.
Yeah, and here's multiple copies. Yeah, those are the fun times actually, because then you actually have to use your brain and imagination and creativity to entertain yourself.
Do you remember the like would use carbon paper, but it was for credit cards. Where we would imprint,
Just gonna talk about that.
Gonna imprint it, so credit card numbers onto the carbon paper.
Yes, it's so funny. I was thinking the exact same thing. I worked at C's Candy seasonally in the mid 2000s, and we'd go do these on-site pop-up shops, and so we'd take all our candy with us and set up, but I don't think it was. I'm pretty sure back then you could still. Back then, which, oh my god, like, I can't believe that was 16, 17 years ago. That makes my head hurt a little bit. That they did have portable machines, not like today where people can just pop the little square thing in their phone, but we had to do the carbon copy thing, and it was like you had to make sure you got it copied in just right. I don't know how to describe
press it down.
Yeah, press it down hard enough. You had to swipe it a couple times. You had to give them a copy. You had to take a copy. Oh man, that it feels so much older than than it really was. And then also back to fax machines, because this really blows my mind. Before our current workplace, I worked in not exactly medical records, but there was exchange of information where we had to send and receive release forms. And it was only by fax. And we're talking up until 2017, they did not take email, not even encrypted. And it's so hard. How are you going to tell like elderly patients that you have to fax me multiple documents and they have to be signed here, there, everywhere else? If they're not, you have to do it again. It felt like such an uncomfortable position. Like, a lot of people don't even know what a fax machine is these days, even 5, 6, 7 years ago. So that was really surprising when I started working there. And even when I left, that it still was fax only, either in person or fax. How fax is more secure than anything else, I don't know.
It is secure because people don't know how to use it.
There you go. No one's going to be stealing your information.
Yeah, because they don't know how to.
What is that? But it was also very warm. Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, you were talking about exactly faxes. Very warm. Very warm.
I think a lot of old tech are very warm.
It's always a lot of energy.
It's always almost at the point that you think it's gonna burst into flames. That's my memory of all the old computers and laptops that I had as well. Fax machine. I also had a job where everything was fax. In 2000s, and it was such a mess because so I had to send like hundreds of pages to report daily to a certain government entity, and it's all done through fax. And so if on page 59 it fails, then you got to do it all over again.
And what if you get the number 1 wrong and you accidentally call with the fax machine someone's phone? Yeah. I've done that, and it's like, I don't know how to tell you that I'm a fax calling you, because they'll pick up and you can hear it through the fax machine.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. Those were the days.
Antiquated. You're not missing out on anything.
But it's just, now that we're talking about it, a lot of these stories are from the 2000s. It wasn't that long ago.
I mean, that literally 2017. That's only It's getting a lot further away now, but
still.
it feels
6 years ago.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it feels crazy.
Feels like yesterday.
I was just thinking the other day I was in the office and someone was trying to print something out. And I was like, I haven't even used one of these printers in years because of the pandemic. So I could not even think about trying to print something right now in the office.
Yeah. It is. Oh, I had to print out a document that had to be presented physically in person. And that really threw me for a loop because the last time I remember having to print out a document like for somebody physically, it was because it was their choice that they wanted a physical itinerary years ago. So for this to be a document that actually the instructions are, you're not getting where you want to go without it. I was like, oh, okay. Better turn it off, turn it back on, unplug it, plug it back in, because I was having technical difficulties.
Hope for the best.
Hope for the best.
Did you guys have, I mean, going back to Katrina saying things overheating, there was a lot of devices I had where they would malfunction because they would overheat. So like turning it on, it was like me hoping and praying that it would work. Like one example was a game console. And it would like freeze, it would load forever, and then it would just keep loading, and it wouldn't stop until I would turn it off and turn it back on again. And it was not very properly ventilated on top of that, so if you touched it, it was very hot to the touch. But yeah, that was a pain to think about back then, like trying to play a video game, and it's like, okay, I'm going to press power, but having that fear of it might not work right now.
Yeah, actually, there are still things that overheat really easily right now. Like I started thinking about my paper shredder. That's one of the things that is still overheating very frequently. Yeah, I don't know. Like it scares me sometimes because like I don't want to burn down my home, but I need to get this done.
You get that hot paper smell.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Paper burns when it's too hot. What is happening?
And some will even stop and give you an alert saying overheat.
Yeah.
Stop.
You're shredding too much paper.
Right.
You're using this for its intended use way too much. Stop. Oh, during the first year of this is more recent, but during the first year of the pandemic, you know, we went from having our laptops moving around all the time or like situated in a ventilated way. Well, I went home like the rest of us, set up a cheap little desk and proceeded to put my laptop down and not move it. Like flat on the wood, particle board, not even good wood. You know, I was excited to have a desk. It was great. And a couple months later, my boyfriend pointed out that my laptop looks wrong. He was like, that's thicker than it should be. And he's like, can you pick that up? Like, let me look at that. It turns out my battery had expanded quite a bit. So I got, oh no, this isn't just a couple months in. Sorry. I remember very specifically this happened during the holiday shutdown. So this is maybe 9 months into the pandemic. So I didn't know anything was wrong. I wasn't doing myself any favors for seeming like I had any technical knowledge at all. And yeah, sure enough, my laptop had like tripled in width. I don't know what to call it. Height in the keyboard area. So then I got terrified. I was like, oh my God, if I turn on my laptop, it's going to blow up today. It's going to explode today. I'm going to get hot battery everywhere. So I had to contact IT over the break and there was nobody there. I think I ended up contacting like, I don't know, the global IT or something. And I was able to get it fixed. I don't know, like 2 days before the office opened back up. But it was, that was my experience with things overheating for a prolonged amount of time.
I think that just means you've been working too much.
I agree. I think let's all just take a vacation because of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think technology in general helps us make things more convenient, but at the same time, you know, you just gotta overlook some of the minor inconveniences. That the classic IT help desk thing still stands. If something doesn't work, just shut it down and restart it. And sometimes there's no answer as to why that works. It just does. But yeah, I love tech. I've been around tech since I was a kid. My family's an early adopter on all things tech. And as much as I love it, it still frustrates me sometimes. Like I was editing the podcast the last couple of months, and the very first episode when we did it, actually my laptop crashed in the last 20 minutes of the first episode, and I could not recover that file, so that was great. So that was actually a very interesting first experience with audio editing. But you get used to it. After a while, you work around it. We can talk about how technology has helped us, though. I mean, I do think, for example, this podcast, I mean, I couldn't imagine doing this when I was a kid, like maybe 20, 30 years ago. This is only possible because of not only the equipment, but the online platforms that are available now. When I was a kid, I talked about role playing with my sister. One of the things that we did was to record radio shows, pretending that like we're the radio DJs, and we would we used a cassette tape recorder with 2 cheap microphones, and then we had our own little show. And that was fun, but it was definitely nowhere near the quality that we could produce now. And then having a place like YouTube to throw it on. I think I have that tape still somewhere. I was like 7 when I made it. So, but now I get to do this again with my friends in something in a fancier technical setting. So it's cool. It's cool to be able to make your passions happen. But yeah, we are coming up towards the end of the episode, and I think today it has been a really great discussion about the things that are significant to us in our past, and kind of reminiscing about the 90s. The 90s will always be like just 15, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't care what people say. And it really made a huge, it was our formative years. So it really is a very important time period that we will never forget. Especially now during Christmas, and hearing about all the like Christmas songs are coming out. A lot of 90s pop icons are coming back, getting out of retirement, recording new music. It's been awesome, especially I think during this pandemic where no one is touring, so they had to find other ways to promote their work. We've been very blessed to be getting a lot of older like celebrities coming out and doing songs and doing shows. And I hope that we will sit together again 10 years from now and reminisce some more. One more thing about the Backstreet Boys. I think 10 years ago, it was a Black Friday. I was at Best Buy shopping for deals, and there was this huge bin of oldies, huge bin of CDs. And of course, there's the best of Backstreet Boys in there. And I was just starting to questioning my existence. It's like, since when is Backstreet Boys like oldies? Yeah. So I think that was the moment when I really truly felt like, oh, I'm getting old. And regardless of what we think about anyone's music or our preferences, it's still a huge part of our history to even remember that they existed or these songs happened and things like that.
Think about like them having their own families now when they were like teen idols.
Yeah.
Like they were,
for sure.
They were available. You had all your hopes and dreams into like maybe one day.
We were all married in spirit to like 10 different boy band members.
No, I wasn't.
No?
I was faithful.
Oh, you were faithful?
Yeah.
I had someone from like every band.
Did you? No, okay. I will say I did have a favorite in every band, but then I did not imagine myself marrying every one of them.
Who was your one?
For me, it was AJ from the Backstreet Boys. he was like the bad boy of the group, but then he also had like a really raspy voice that I really like. So it was also because he was so talented. So he had the personality and talent. And then I had favorite in NSYNC, which was Lance, and I guess that won't happen.
No,
because I don't think he would like me. But yeah, I was huge on Lance, but then he was also dating. Was there Danielle Fish?
Oh, yeah, from Boy Meets
from Boy Meets World, Topanga. And I was okay with that though because I really liked Topanga. So I was like, when they were together, I was like, okay, that's fine.
You're allowed. It could be worse.
Yeah.
Lucia, who were your top 3?
Okay, well, I apparently had something for much older men when I was a child because I loved Kevin, who I think was like the oldest of the oldest boy band.
Yeah.
And
no, I think NSYNC had one guy who was the same age as Kevin. Maybe it was Kurt. No,
probably Chris.
No, Chris Kirkpatrick,
Joey,
right?
Fatone. Was it Joey? Was he the
I think
older
Chris
one?
was the oldest.
I think Chris is the oldest. Yeah.
And then I loved Justin Timberlake. That extended into his solo career as well.
I couldn't because there's too many people. There's too much competition.
Too much competition. I know. I don't know what that was about.
Yeah,
those are probably my top 2. I'll leave it there.
Because Lucia just has
too much to think about.
Yeah, too many. Jin, did you have a favorite artist or celebrity?
I actually don't. I enjoy songs very much, but I've never been a fan of like a person. Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable.
You're normal.
We're not as reasonable. It's okay.
Yeah.
I think for me, I guess in the boy bands, my favorite was JC from NSYNC.
Good choice.
That is a good choice.
That was actually my favorite singer of NSYNC.
He's a really good singer.
He was a good singer, and I tend to I tend to like people who have real talent. I'm not saying the others didn't, but it was just like he stood out because I liked his voice a lot.
Yeah, I didn't even know what Lance sounded like.
He has a very deep voice. But yeah, those were good memories. Memories of like I said, all the posters on my wall from like Tiger Beats and Team Beats and all those magazines that you buy.
Yeah, Teen Vogue.
Yeah, it's an important part of our younger days. Let's put it that way. And you know, I hope they're all doing well. and NSYNC, if you know, you gotta get your act together. You gotta have that reunion one way or another.
Please for us.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for sharing. Any other last thoughts about the 90s music?
Yes, because I needed to go pre-95 and just shout out to like Boys to Men,
Kids on the Block,
All for One, New Kids on the Block, Jodeci. Like I love early 90s R&B. I don't know what that's about.
It took me for a while to notice that Casey and JoJo was Jodeci, with the other half of Jodeci.
Oh, I loved Casey and JoJo. Like, don't even get me started about middle school dances and stuff like that. Okay, that's maybe not for today, but
middle school dances, yes.
Still love that. Nobody was dancing with me. I just love the music.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, All for One. I loved All for One.
Great.
I just have the cassette tape somewhere in my house. But Drew Hill.
Drew Hill, I had them.
Drew Hill, I think that was the very first CD I bought here in the US was Drew Hill.
Oh, actually, what was everyone's first music purchase, I guess, growing up then? Because mine, I will say, I bought 2, like the first time I ever bought one for myself. My parents always had music and stuff like their own CDs and stuff. But when they let me go to a Sam Goody in the mall and choose my own cassette tape that I could buy with like money I got as a gift, I bought 2 cassette tapes. One of them was a single of Invisible Man by 98 Degrees. And the other one was Together Again by Janet Jackson.
Oh.
Yeah. And so those are my 2 first musical purchases I ever made for myself.
Mine were I can't believe I can't remember what it's called, but it was the Michael Jackson CD that he and Janet Jackson had that song Scream on. I can't remember the name. Oh, I was obsessed. I was obsessed with Michael Jackson, first of all. Okay, he's not boy band, but he was when
He
as
was
a child.
He was one of the early boy bands.
He's probably my number one. Like as a 6, 7-year-old, I was obsessed with Michael Jackson. I used to watch the concert footage and see girls fainting and think that's going to be me one day. Like, is that just what happens?
But Michael Jackson transcends like generations because he was in so many different generations of music too.
So, I mean, I'm obsessed with Michael Jackson. So that was one of them. And then my second one, or actually I can't remember the order because it was around the same time, but Ace of Base cassette. Ace of Base cassette was my, oh man, I know all the songs. Yep.
For me, I think it wasn't a pop star song, but it was Beethoven's symphony. Yeah, because at that time it was when I was in middle school, and I didn't know that much about pop singers. Yeah, so
actually, no worries. My very very first CD in my life, I think, was also Beethoven. It was the Moonlight Sonata. Because I loved that piece from music class in elementary school. I do have quite a collection of classical music at home, and also lots of oldies because my parents listen to oldies. So, but yeah, I think this could be another episode where we just talk about music because there's just so much to talk about, right? But yeah, I think today, we went over a lot of the things that were really interesting, and I think if there's anything in there that you want to hear more about, let us know, and we'll be happy to talk more. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. It is towards the end of December, so happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, and we'll see you in the new year. Happy 2023. My goodness. That's coming up real soon. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll see you next month. Thanks. You were listening to the Boba Bunch podcast, hosted by Katrine, Lucia, Crystal, and Jin. Intro and outro music by Audio Coffee on Pixabay, sound effects by Dreams to Become on Pixabay, and originals recorded by Katrine. Produced and directed by Katrine Chow. And made with love in the San Francisco Bay Area. Happy holidays!